That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Worst Ones, the directorial debut of Lise Akoka and Romane Gueret, which premiered in the Un Certain Regard sidebar at the 2022 Cannes Film Festival, where it won the top prize in that sidebar. It is being released courtesy of Kino Lorber on March 24th, 2023.
You saw this at Cannes.
I didn't, actually. This is the first time I've seen it.
Oh. You really liked it.
I liked it overall. I think especially for a debut and for kind of the complexities that went into getting these child performances, I think it's pretty impressive.
I agree. There are a lot of things about it that are impressive. I was probably more cool on it than you.
Sure.
And I kind of wish it would have been something different. But the basic story is we're in this... It's referred to as like a hood in France somewhere. I think the town's called Picasso.
Like the neighborhood, yeah.
So it's like a rough neighborhood. And there's a filmmaker who's come into town looking to cast children in his new movie.
Played by Johan Heldenbergh, who's a very notable Belgian Flemish actor.
And he cast 4 of these kids, so no acting experience. And then the title The Worst Ones comes from, everyone thinking like he chose like the worst kids possible in this neighborhood to be in this movie. There are 4 of them. We can talk about them individually, but these 4 kids are cast. The movie's made. One of them ends up dropping out at a point, kind of early on. Another one ends up getting kind of upset with the director over a sex scene they filmed. And then we're left with 2 who in the fictitious film within the film are like brother and sister, and the sister is pregnant by the younger brother, but it's more like
metaphorical.
Metaphorically, it's odd, but the movie ends with the completion of the fictitious film within the film. Mm-hmm. That's it. So it's very basic, the story, but there is a lot going on because of the 4 kids in it and their own sort of personalities, what they're dealing with, their families, and their interactions with the crew of the film. And
how this experience is kind of rocking the boat in their own social circles as well.
So let's describe the 4 kids. So one of them is Ryan. He's played by...
Timéo Mahaut?
He's the smallest one. Maybe he's like 7,
mm-hmm.
I think. He has ADHD. He doesn't have the best home life.
His sister is basically raising him. And the mother is trying to get custody.
The film opens with all of the 4 main kids sort of doing an audition, and we find out that little Ryan, his sister / guardian, encouraged him to do it.
The opening almost reminds me of Gaspar Noé's Climax when all those.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you said that because I couldn't put my finger on the film I was thinking, but yes, it looks and feels like Climax. Okay, then there's Lily.
Mm-hmm.
Lily is kind of made out to be the slutty one. She's older. I think she's 17. Her brother has recently died, so she's grieving that, and then also all of the other kids are picking on her. They think she's slutty because back in like the 8th grade, someone started a rumor that never left.
Mm-hmm.
But let her tell it, she's still a virgin. Then we have Maylis.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you say that?
Yep. She's the one that drops out.
There isn't much to her experience in the film. She kind of is cast, doesn't say much. Then at one point, she and her father go to the director and say, I don't want to do it anymore.
But there is an altercation with, is it Jessy or one of the other boys on the set, which I think is the impetus for her.
It's Jessy being mean and kind of picking on Lily. And then Maylis has she stands up for her. Mm-hmm. But yeah. And finally, there's Jessy. He's the older boy. Mm-hmm. He's a dick, a bully. Mm-hmm. In the fictitious film, he's playing the romantic interest to Lily, but in real life, he's not kind to her. He also picks on her. He picks on everyone.
Yeah.
And he kind of falls off towards the end because there's a sex scene being filmed, which we can talk about in a minute, but he has an outburst during that and then makes some accusations about the crew, about that filming that caused him to sort of distance himself from it.
Yeah, he becomes a bit detached. Mm-hmm.
So we kind of don't ever really find out where he ends up. Okay, so I'm just going to go through my notes quickly. Let's start with the sex scene. So the director, he's talking to these 2 teenagers about sex, he actually reveals his own sexual experience, like when he lost his virginity. He's asking them, which is super awkward.
They're having not intimate, but exercises where they're staring into each other's eyes, and
which is so awkward because it's like this middle-aged man with these teenagers, but also these two teenagers don't get along in real life, so it just feels like so inappropriate, and putting them in a really vulnerable spot.
Well, vulnerable because they don't have a support system at home either for anyone. They can't really talk about. They each have kind of complex relationships with sex and intimacy, and then tossing them together without any kind of outlet on how to process that too is important. Right.
And then if that's not enough, because I'm thinking, oh, we're just talking about the sex scene, we're not going to see it. Then the next scene is them filming it, and it's not graphic except that they both have to get into bed in their underwear, and it's just awkward hearing the director telling them, like, look into each other's eyes, kiss this way, don't make the smacking sound, I want to hear you breathing. So uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden, Jesse has an outburst where one of the crew who's in the room,
Clovis, played by Francois Creton,
he's calling him the F slur and saying, like, he's looking at my ass, I don't want him in here, which is obviously really awkward. That crew member leaves, and the director's telling everyone, like, let's just get through this and we'll process what happened later. And then that's when everything kind of falls apart for Jesse, because later on, when the director goes to Jesse's home. He goes to someone's home where Jesse's is, and also little Ryan, and he wants to give little Ryan his payment.
No, he gives him tickets to a rapper he likes.
Oh, you're right. He gives him tickets to a show. And it's clear that Jesse told his friends and, like, whomever is in this house something different than what actually happened on set. Like, kind of making it seem
he's
like...
embellished. Yeah.
Yeah, and that, like, they were all, like, looking at Lily inappropriately, which is not true. Lily seemed really comfortable in that situation.
Well, he also disparages her because he said she was in her element.
Right. Then there's a crew member who Lily has fallen in love with, which is super awkward. Because the minute she sees him, I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh, she's going to like him.
Yeah. Well,
he's a handsome guy.
Yeah.
And then when she realizes, because he's controlling the audio, like the mic, I think, and she realizes that he can hear everything she's saying when they're on set, she's kind of in her way trying to be subtle to drop hints that, like, she's into him. But it's like, girl, this is a grown-ass man. And then one day she invites him out for a drink after she has told another crew member who's been kind of nice to her, a younger woman. She tells her, like, I really like that guy. And the other lady's like, girl... I mean, do what you gotta do. So poor Lily invites this crew member to have a drink. And before this man can even get comfortable on his bar stool, she goes, I'm in love with you.
I love you.
And he's like, And then if that's not awkward enough, this poor girl says, I wrote you a letter. And the look on that man's face is like...
I thought he handled it very tastefully.
He did. He goes, you can read the letter, but we are never going to talk about this again. Yeah. Don't ask me what I think about it. And then we cut to her on the bus crying.
Sobbing, yeah.
I really liked Lily, that actor, and her portrayal.
Mallory Wanecque?
I really liked Ryan. I think, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a scene where the director, the director's probably my least favorite part of the film.
Johan Heldenbergh. He gives a really good performance in the Broken Circle Breakdown. He's also, U.S. audiences might recognize him from The Zookeeper's Wife, opposite Jessica Chastain.
I don't think his acting was poor. I just think that the way that character was created, it's like he's kind of neurotic and stressed out. There's even a moment where he's like in the car listening to meditation when Ryan walks up on him.
Well, it's about, I think it's a film about perspectives, like what the title I think indicates is how you, like, are these kids the worst ones or are they the best ones to portray these traumatized children without being further traumatized? What are we saying about that? Is this exploitative or is this giving them an opportunity? And the answer is not very clear. It's like a complete gray zone in almost every possible way, which I think is really interesting. I don't agree with a lot of, I think, how the director is approaching them. And again, because these kids really have no one to speak to about this with, and the sex scene in particular, you know, Jesse's kind of emasculated because he gets a note from the director about how he's like, come on, you've been with girls before, don't you know what you're doing? And I think that is kind of what triggers him to act the way he does. And it's just, as much as this director thinks in sharing with these children, like he shares with Ryan his experiences with his own mother, it's like it's not quite the same, and you're still kind of stuck on yourself. And it's also asking the question about how responsible are we towards these communities that we kind of invade and plunder and will leave forever. He tries to have that conversation with Lily about how, you know, there's going to be a really weird feeling when you're going to be close to all of us and then it's gone, it's done, and you're going to miss it. And I really like the final scene, because that's where Ryan cries, because the whole time he's saying like he doesn't cry, he's never cried, and the scene that he shared with his sister, and I think it brings it to all these complex layers of things going on, because we as the audience know their personal lives, and we know also what's kind of going through their heads as they're acting this scene out, and I think that's done very well.
Yeah, you went through a lot. Okay, so. Another thing that didn't really work for me is the story with like the film within the film, because there's this big build up to a scene that involves a bunch of pigeons.
They only get one shot to do it. Mm-hmm.
So little Ryan, because metaphorically he has gotten his sister pregnant. I didn't quite understand that story, and I don't think we're supposed to. Mm-hmm. But then there's supposed to be a scene in the fictitious film where we see little Ryan pregnant, mm-hmm. and some old lady clutching him, and then there are like 1,000 pigeons released, and I just thought, this is really off the wall. It's just doing a lot. And then I also,
it looks beautiful though, that scene, the way it's shot.
Sure. I think overall, I think this movie could have taken out a few things, because like you ran through already, there are a lot of interesting themes and topics that I think could have been better developed, but instead we got this like really like this soup that has a lot of ingredients in it. And I think I would have just preferred dealing with Jessy and Ryan, mm-hmm. and how this director is manipulating them, using them without any concern for how, like you mentioned, he does tell Lily, like, after you're done filming, you might feel away. Like, we could have explored that more. And then also how the film brings up that they're sort of exploiting the stereotype of this kind of neighborhood, which just further stigmatizes it.
And it's a double-edged sword that I think the film is trying to grapple with.
It is. So I really commend all the themes, and I think it's interesting. I just wish maybe like we would have taken out maybe like 40% of the story, sure. and develop what we had left.
I mean, and it's almost like this, it feels to me like Larry Clark's Kids a little bit, is in, you know, taking these people off the street and kind of just using them and then throwing them away.
It's not as gritty.
It's not as gritty. They're not, and this film crew is not trying to do that. No. It's like there's some sensibility of about what they're doing, and the discomfort also reminded me a little bit of Catherine Breillat's 2002 film Sex is Comedy, which is all about the construction of filming a sex scene. That's part of a film production, which I think is interesting. But the old lady that you mentioned that's playing the grandma within the film to Ryan, that's Dominique Frot, who's, you know, in this day and age is often playing kind of kooky older lady characters like that. She was recently in Titan. She had a small part. She's a nurse in the beginning of the film Inside in 2007. Notably, she is Catherine Frot's sister, who's a favorite of mine, who I believe I pointed out to you several times before. I think it looks good. It was shot by Eric Dumont, who has lensed a few Stéphane Brise's films, like Another World and At War recently. He also lensed both. Christian Carrion made a film called My Son and then remade it in English. He shot both of those. But overall, I like the look. I think it's kind of an easy watch, and it maybe is the kind of cinema you either like or don't. But
it's very rare I like being around children or seeing them on screen. And I think this is an instance where I didn't really like being around these kids. I did warm up to a couple of them at the end.
Yeah.
But just like I don't like in real life being around kids, that's how I felt watching it. So it wasn't an enjoyable experience.
I don't either. But I do get the sense that at the end of this film and the film within the film, that for Lily and Ryan, they have been shown that there is a world outside of the one that's kind of trapped and repress them, and maybe they can make the most of it. And I like that sense, that hopeful sense at the end.
I would give this film 3 out of 5. What would you give it?
I give it 3.5 out of 5.
Anything else?
No.
Hit the thanks button. Listen to our podcast. Bye.